Hey everybody, it's your pal Sal from Sal Dougie's House of Cards, and today we're going to take a look at the 2023 Milwaukee Brewers through the lens of my baseball cards. So I pulled as many players as I have from the Brewers active roster out of my card collection. Some players I did have to use cards from other teams. There's been some new acquisitions. I don't have some Brewers cards, and there is a handful of players that I don't have, but we'll go through and break down each position group and kind of talk about them and show the cards, and then we'll talk a little bit about those players that I don't have cards for as well. But we'll hop right into it with the catchers. So that's probably where the most exciting moment of the Brewers offseason was, and that was acquiring catcher William Contreras from the Atlanta Braves as part of the Sean Murphy trade, sending Sean Murphy from Oakland to the Braves. The Brewers were able to get in there and grab William Contreras for Esuteri Ruiz. That was kind of their contribution to the trade. They sent Esuteri Ruiz to the A's. But a pretty big coup for the Brewers, given how well Contreras played last year and how big the need was at catcher, and that they didn't really give up a lot to get him. So that'll be a position of interest. I'm a little concerned that the expectations will be a little bit high. And like we said, Williams a relatively young player. That was kind of his first big season. So it does remain to be seen a little bit if he can replicate it. But regardless, super exciting moment in the Brewers offseason, and definitely looking forward to what William has in store. The other part of the Brewers catching tandem is veteran Victor Caratini. So Caratini was on the team last year. He's pretty much the definition of serviceable. He'll be a veteran presence, and he'll help guide the pitching staff, and he'll hit some home runs here and there, but not exactly a major offensive force as are most backup catchers. Taking a look at the infield group, it's a little bit of a new mix, but probably the most important player out of that position grouping is Willy Adames. So Willie, the Brewers shortstop, and really one of the main power threats at shortstop in the league. So, Willie had an outstanding season last year, building off of one the season before. So, really looking forward to watching Willie play again and hoping for another big offensive output because the Brewers are going to need it. They're a little offensively challenged, similar to last season. So, Willy Adames having a big year is important for the Brewers to remain competitive at the top of their division. Another big important piece of the Brewers infield is first baseman Rowdy Tellez. Again, probably the Brewers' main power threat and another important source of generating offense. They did add a couple other veterans to the mix, one being Brian Anderson, previously with the Marlins, who had some decent years for the Marlins. This is a very much a Brewers pickup, try to grab somebody kind of on that baseball equivalent of a second contract that had showed some promise, maybe some power. Hope to get him in Miller Park and see those power number goes up. Or the whole league, I think, is kind of waiting to see who is going to benefit the most from the shifting changes. So it'll be interesting to see what kind of production Anderson is able to give the team, and he kind of falls into the X factor category. If he can kind of recapture some of that, he could potentially help make the lineup a little more of a threat. So in addition to Brian Anderson, they added another power source, and that was Luke Voigt. So Luke Voigt kind of came into camp on a minor league deal, and the club seemed to like him on the team, and he seemed to like the club because they kind of went through some rigmarole, but they got through all the hoops they needed to get through to get Luke on the team. So he will probably see a lot of time at designated hitter. And he will also probably spell Rowdy at first base. But hopefully he will also hit a lot of home runs at power-friendly Miller Park and kind of recapture some of his previous performance. Kind of really looking back at the pandemic-shortened 2020 when he hit, it was like 22 home runs in about 56 games-ish. So hopefully, at that level, but even if not, he has been a decent power performer over the past few seasons. So safe to say there'll be some balls flying out of Miller Park. And then a couple guys that were on the team last year. One is Luis Urias, and Luis is going to kind of play all over the diamond a little bit. Really helping Council come up with some creative lineups or cover injuries by being able to play third, short, and second base and provide a reasonable power threat as well. But with Luis, really kind of taking that next step really comes down to consistency. Can he consistently produce? If so, he will probably find himself in the lineup almost every day somewhere. If not, it will be a mix of other infielders as well, including Mike Brasso. So Brasso kind of fits that same bill, maybe not the same power threat as Urias, but certainly versatile enough to play third, short, and second. So an important utility player for the Brewers this year. And then additionally, making his major league debut this season is Bryce Terang. So that's a really cool bit of news from the end of spring training that Terang was going to make the opening day roster as his major league debut, kind of a guy that's been a prospect in the system for a while. So it's nice to see those guys work their way through the system, and hopefully, Bryce has an opportunity to make an impact. It kind of remains to be seen. He will probably spend a lot of time backing up early, but it is a noteworthy add to the roster because it also meant that Keston Hiura will not make the opening day roster and ultimately was exposed to waivers, but did end up accepting it outright to Nashville. So Keston is still in the Brewers system, will probably have an impact on the 2023 season, but not on opening day. So that's kind of the wrap on the Brewers infield. A lot of important pieces for their offense there, absolutely, and definitely some power potential. With the outfielders group, it really kind of all starts with Christian Yelich. You just kind of in the back of my mind, always hoping that Yelich can recapture 2018, 2019, wondering how much of it was, kind of an injury that changed his career, wondering if he'll benefit from the shift rules, but hoping to see Yelich kind of go from a pretty good player to recapturing, that kind of MVP dominant power stroke and, really average as well, and propel the Brewers to the playoffs in a deep playoff run. So I would expect Christian to have a pretty good year no matter what. It really comes down to can he capture the magic of 2018 and 2019, or is this just kind of the player he's going to be for the rest of his career? So Yelich, as always, a huge part of the Brewers. Continue to look in the outfield. The next most important player, I would say, is probably Garrett Mitchell. Garrett he did make his debut last year and had some pretty good moments on the team, and he does seem to have some tools that kind of trend towards elite. Certainly his speed, and even potentially maybe his power, or at least his power relative to his position. So really hoping Garrett can help drive the Brewers this season and kind of maybe fill that role that Lorenzo Cain did in the 2018 season, and just be a major force out of center field. Another key outfielder and potential X factor for the Brewers is Jesse Winker. Jesse Winker was acquired from Seattle in the offseason. Colton Wong was traded for him, along with Abraham Toro, who will start at AAA Nashville. So Winker, another one of those guys that did have some prior, I think it was 2021, he had a pretty big season for the Reds and really a lot of power numbers in a power-friendly ballpark. So again, hopefully someone that helps drive the Brewers offense, and we'll probably see a lot of time in right field. And then we also have Tyrone Taylor. So Tyrone is going to start the season on the injured list, so a little bit of a delay to Tyrone's 2023 season, but certainly he will be an important player in the mix when he's healthy. He can play center and back up Mitchell. He can play right and back up Winker, or even potentially platoon or start, depending on how his offensive production is. Another player with decent power potential, and certainly a lot of fun to watch. And then there was one other player on the active roster listed as an outfielder that I don't have a card for, and that is Owen Miller, who was acquired via trade from the Guardians in the offseason. So Owen will be in the mix as a backup outfielder. And then the Brewers do like to get creative, so I would imagine at least Brian Anderson seeing some time in potentially left regularly, and who knows who else. So that's kind of the breakdown of the position players group going into the season. much like the past few seasons, the Brewers' true strength is their pitching staff. So that was the breakdown on the position players. Sorry if I misspoke, but taking a look at that pitching staff, that really is where a lot of the Brewers' hopes and dreams for the season lie, and it starts right up front with one Corbin Burnes. So Burnes had an outstanding season last year, was the Cy Young the year before. So really hoping to have that same top of the league performance from Corbin Burnes to give the Brewers a chance to edge out the Cardinals and any other potential challengers and get their way into the playoffs. So a lot of it's going to come down to what kind of season does Corbin have, both performance and health wise. But the Brewers do have a pretty nice deep rotation, so it doesn't just end with Corbin Burnes. It definitely rolls right into Brandon Woodruff, who had a really big time season for the Brewers the last year and the year before, and it's really kind of been contributing on a high level for a while now. So watching Woodruff pitch is always a great time, and he is going to be pretty much just about as important as Burnes, and if they can really have the potential for a 1-2 punch at the top of the rotation. And another player that also has had some big time moments for the Brewers and is a huge X factor is Freddie Peralta. Freddie did battle through a lot of injuries and a little inconsistency last season. The season before, he really was a top flight starter right along with Woodruff and Burnes, and the Brewers had a pretty menacing top of the rotation. So really hoping to for a healthy 2023 from Freddie, and really helping it, a little bit more consistency throughout his starts, and really be a driving force in the Brewers being able to kind of grind teams down and win the pitching war of attrition, and really try to win it on the front end, because that's where they're going to have to do it. We'll get into the bullpen a little bit here in a second, but it really is the loaded up front on that Brewers pitching staff. And then a couple of key guys for depth, and I think a decently high ceiling is Eric Lauer. He's had some pretty great starts over the past couple seasons, but he maybe lacks a little in the durability category as far as stamina, and a little inconsistent at times. So I wouldn't really put him quite in the category as the other three starters that we looked at, but certainly a lot of good potential there. And if you can raise the ceiling on your fourth starter, you can put a lot of pressure on other teams. So super important player for the Brewers this year, along with an old returning friend, and that is Wade Miley. So Wade Miley was signed in the offseason. I think it was the Brewers' main free agent signing. Most of the other new additions were acquired via trade, or I would say, potentially lesser players. I guess maybe Luke Voigt kind of, getting signed at the end there might be up there. But Miley's a pretty decent player. He certainly had a good 2018 for the Brewers and helped them win their division. He has bounced around on a couple teams, had some injury issues, but also had some pretty decent runs when healthy. So potentially really a great option to extend out the Brewers' pitching depth on the front end and continue that advantage. Another important Brewer that kind of could fit the starting or bullpen profile at this time is Aaron Ashby, with the exception that he is injured. So unfortunately for the Brewers, Ashby will start the season on the injured list, but he will return and then potentially either bolster the starting rotation or the bullpen, or in modern baseball, sometimes the two just get blended together anyway. And Ashby will be a big part of that, and certainly someone the Brewers, I think, view as a big part of their future. His extension definitely was kind of, I think, a strategic part of preparing for when Corbin Burnes is no longer on the team. So we'll look forward to Ashby's season when healthy. With the bullpen, the relievers, they don't get a ton of cards, and they don't always get their cards kind of in the mix early. So I don't have a lot of the Brewers that are going to be pitching out of the bullpen. I will say that I'm very concerned about the bullpen, probably more concerned about that than the offense. They certainly have the closing position locked down with Devin Williams. He's just an outstanding pitcher and really almost unhittable, and a really huge advantage for closing out games. But, that's as opposed to previous seasons where the Brewers kind of had a long line of guys coming out of the bullpen ready to end the game. There's a lot more question marks behind Devin Williams than the past few seasons, and obviously a huge turning point for the Brewers last year was trading Hader. It certainly upset Williams emotionally. He did perform at a high level for the entire season, so he was certainly able to push through it. But the Brewers had to rely on different players to help secure leads down the stretch, and it did not have that same consistent result. So we'll continue on with the players that I have cards for, and then we'll kind of get into some of the players that I don't that are going to play important roles in the bullpen. So Adrian Hauser will also be a big piece of the Brewers this year, who also may start the season on the injured list, but will fill a similar role to Ashby, kind of a swingman, maybe a little bit more of the long man than the starting option, but certainly will be able to spot start, eat bullpen innings, piggyback start, all that fun stuff, and hopefully see a return to form for Adrian. Did have a pretty good season 2 years ago and really made that Brewers rotation really nails by having it so long. And so him being so effective with his sinker. So hopefully, a return to the 2021 season after a little bit of a struggle in 2022. And then another Brewer acquired in the offseason was a player that has previously been on the team, and that is Justin Wilson, who will also start the season on the injured list. So not a huge snapshot of the Brewers bullpen through my cards, but there certainly are a lot of other important players, including probably most importantly Matt Bush, who was acquired last season, and then also Javi Guerra. Colby Milner will play a big role, definitely, especially left-handers. Joel Payampas, Peter Strzelecki, and Gus Varland, a Rule 5 player making the opening day roster. So we'll see if Varland is able to last the entire season on the roster as a Rule 5. And then also Bryce Wilson, the former Pittsburgh Pirate, is on the team to provide some depth. I think some limited talent there, so hopefully not too many innings out of Bryce Wilson. But that is the breakdown of the 2023 Milwaukee Brewers. It definitely looks to be an exciting season. I think the Brewers will have a pretty good season. They've got a pretty talented team. I do think they're a little bit behind St. Louis still, so I do think the Cardinals will win the division. But I think the Brewers will have a winning record again, and I think they'll be in the mix for the wild card again. So hopefully this year they're able to secure one of those spots, and who knows, maybe the pitching staff gets hot at the right time, and they're able to make some real noise in the playoffs. Regardless, I'm super excited for opening day. I hope you all enjoyed my breakdown and looking at those cards. Please go ahead and hit that like button and subscribe, and I will talk to you all later.